taking a peek at the infotainment system inside of the Kia K4. The K4 technically has two different versions of the screen. It's either going to be one with factory navigation or one without, like what we're looking at here. But regardless of whether or not yours has factory nav, you can hook up over Android or iPhone devices to use Google Maps, Apple Maps, and Waze through Apple devices, and then Google Maps and Waze through Android. So you've got some flexibility there. In this video, I'm going to show you everything you need to know. You've got this little hamburger button along the very top where you can look at a few options, including profile settings, where you'd be able to change users. So if you've got multiple people driving the vehicle, you can select technically up to 3 profiles. So there's driver 1, driver 2, or your guest profile instead. The guest profile is actually going to have some limitations, so you won't be able to do certain reset options and things like that. You've got your current date, your current time, your connection level, and then if you've got a phone on the wireless charge pad, that is going to give you a little heads up that there's a phone charging up. You can tap the time there in order to actually get in to adjust your date and time. And then there's this little tab along the top you can slide down in order to either toggle the display off, or there are some other options like adjusting the brightness, entering a quiet mode, or hitting the gear icon to adjust things out. So if you wanted to have your touchscreen beep there, changing devices, and a few other options, you can do that and hit done. And you can see there, it's added in some additional options. So the beeping that we're getting here, if you want to toggle that off, you can. So it's a matter of preference whether or not that one comes on or not. Quiet mode essentially is going to play the audio strictly through the front speakers, not through the rear. From here, you've got a series of other options. So we're going to start off on the media side of things. So for media, you've got AM, FM, SiriusXM, Bluetooth audio, sounds of nature as well. If you had a USB stick with some MP3s on there, you'd be able to use that too. But one thing is that it's strictly going to be USB Type-C. So this is a USB Type-A device, just with a little adapter. You're going to plug it in down the middle. And when you plug it in, you've got two different ports. You've got the one on the left versus the right. You have to use the one on the left. And then there's a little button here. So you need to make sure you're on the charging and then the data transfer, because if that one's not on, you're not actually going to get data transfer. It's strictly going to work for charging instead. But as you can see there, we're currently, there we go, in our USB audio instead. And it's strictly going to be audio. So this USB stick does have video formats on it, or videos I should say on it, but it's strictly going to be audio instead. But you've got the option of going into Bluetooth, sounds of nature, and a few other things. Then there's some buttons down the bottom here. But your media gives you so many options. Like I said, AM, FM, SiriusXM, etc. If you wanted to be able to save in stations, you could. So if you wanted to save it as a favorite. So as of right now, there are some SiriusXM stations. You could get rid of the stations that way if you want to. Back into FM, we have nothing now. So if you wanted to save in a station, it's exactly what you just saw there. So anything that has this little icon next to it, you're just going to push in order to be able to save it as a preset or as a favorited station. So let's go through, and there are a few. Now this is obviously going to be based off of your geographic area. So if you're new to an area, just listen to some stations and then save in some of your favorites. Once you've got them all saved in, just go to your favorites there to see. And it's a mix. So if you wanted to listen to AM, FM, SiriusXM, you'd have the flexibility to be able to do it. And it's a mix of all the stations there. You can hit this little hamburger icon to edit your favorites. So if you don't like the order, you can do a drag and drop in order to adjust them. You can select certain ones to delete. You can mark all, unmark all to delete whatever options there you wanted to instead. SiriusXM is straightforward. You go into your SiriusXM station. Along the very bottom, you can click there to get to a fuller screen instead if you want to. You can save the station out. You can enter a unique channel name if you'd like to as well. If you're on FM, hit there, you can scan. So if rather than going through stations, you can just scan to different options. If you're new to a geographic area, you can do a just basic refresh instead to see what stations are available. You could also do a manual tune that way. So you can adjust out this way if you want to. It's kind of a neat way to do it. Back into your traditional FM, enter a station this way instead. So you can just type in your station that way. And then there are some other basics. So you've got a series of different sound settings that are available. So let's see here, speed dependent volume. So if you're going faster or slower, it can automatically adjust your volume. Startup maximum, with this one enabled. If you've got the audio cranked and then you turn the car off, turn it back on again, it's not going to be cranked. So it'll start it at a lower volume instead. Do you want it focused on the driver, people in the back row, etc.? Recenter it in. You could do a little fade, or a balance to fine tune it or bring it back to center again. You can adjust things out. So the treble, mid-range, and bass, this is slightly off. Mid-range down, treble down, something like this, in my opinion, gives pretty good audio inside of the ride, but that's going to come down to a matter of personal preference. So what I'd recommend here is play one of your favorite songs, and then as you're listening, start to adjust it out until you find something that works well for your ears. Let's see, guidance volumes. So as you go to back up, there are different beepings and guidance prompts and things like that you can adjust. Driver assistant warnings with a few different options here. So there's haptic warning. So if you start to veer over into a lane without signaling someone's in your blind spot, you'll get a little bit of a steering wheel vibration, almost like you're running over a rumble pavement or there's something wrong with your alignment. That's not the case. It's just that there's something going on and the vehicle's letting you know. There's a blind spot warning sound. So if somebody enters the blind spot on either side of the vehicle, you'll see that that highlights red to let you know, but you can get a basic warning sound there instead if you'd like to, and then just different priority sounds. For Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, you can adjust individual options. So if you wanted your media played at a certain volume, your ringtones at different volumes, you'd have the flexibility to be able to do it. And then I think that was about it. SiriusXM gives us the basics there as well. So sound settings, subscription status, and things like that. But that's using media inside of the ride. Next up is going to be adding in a phone.
On your mobile device in order to search.
And as of right now, you can see there.
Select the name that matches vehicle name on the screen.
There we go. So starting off on the iPhone side of things, we just want to hit K4. PIN numbers match up, so let's pair. Do you want to allow contacts and favorites to sync up? This is not my car. So if it was yours, you could obviously say yes there if you wanted to. And we are now fully connected. So if you wanted to stop here, you could. So your phone's connected, so you can make phone calls and stream audio that way.
Contacts download was unsuccessful.
That said unsuccessful because when I connected, I said no. But you can see there, we are technically connected to the phone. I could dial through if I wanted to, listen to audio on my phone. But you've also got the option for Apple CarPlay. And one cool thing is that inside of the K4, it's wireless Apple CarPlay as well. You do have the option for backwards compatibility. So if you wanted to use a USB device, you've got the flexibility to do it. I mean, that's USB type A, so you'd have to use a USB-C, but you've got that available as an option. But because we're wireless, we're just gonna go use CarPlay. It's nice that it is backwards compatible though, so you could go either way if you want to. But a few seconds in, and we should be just about connected here. Phone projection, iPhone 14, and it's just doing the final stages of connecting in a few seconds. Ah, look at that, fully connected. I love it, and your full screen Apple CarPlay, and it looks so good. So this is gonna be your home screen for Apple CarPlay. You've got your current time, connection, and battery levels, your map that was open last, audio application was open last, miscellaneous application, and then you can go to an icon view, back to a home screen instead. You can see there that you've got your map that's open. So this home screen is kind of dynamic. So this is going to be whatever map was open last. If you've got an event that's coming up today, that's going to show up today as well. And then you'll have your search box and audio. But if you didn't have a calendar notification coming up today, the search box and the audio box would be stretched across the top there instead. You've got Apple Maps, Google Maps, and Waze inside of Apple CarPlay. Honestly, all the map applications work great. My personal go-to though is Waze, and big reason why, as you go to drive, people mark things off on the map. You can see live traffic. If there are police pulling people over, if there are speed traps and things like that, people are pretty good at marking that off, and you can mark things off. So if you see a speed trap, you see hazards and things like that, you can give people a heads up and let them know. But you've got a ton of map applications there. Hoopla's a library app. Live One's a radio app. You can listen to your music, podcasts, and things like that as well. It's amazing. And there's some flexibility here. So you can also slightly adjust this out for driving focus. If you wanted to adjust your wallpaper to change out the look, you'd have the flexibility to do it as well. And then you've got Siri too. So if you do a long button push and hold on that steering wheel button, that's going to activate your Siri assistant there instead. But I mean, it's straightforward using it. If you were back home, you'd be on this main screen, and in order to get back into CarPlay, you can hit CarPlay there. But when you're in one of the K4s that doesn't have factory nav, there's a button down the middle here, and that's for map. So if you hit map, that's going to launch you into the map right on your phone instead. I love that Kia's designed that as an option. So if you don't have factory nav, you're connected over to CarPlay, you've got that available as an option. You've got this little settings icon that you can hit as well in order to get to this screen. And you can see there we're connected to CarPlay. So if you wanted to disconnect from CarPlay and strictly be connected for phone calls, you've got that flexibility. So it's straightforward doing it. You can reconnect to CarPlay that way as well. And then you can see there, open Apple CarPlay. And one cool thing is that you can also adjust the layout of these icons. So on your phone, all you're going to do, go into your settings, general, and then CarPlay. You're going to find your vehicle and then go to customize. And you can see there all of the available options. So if you wanted your podcast at the top, along with whatever map application you'd like to use, you've got that flexibility. Anything with a minus next to it, you can also remove it from the screen if you wanted to. It saves it at the bottom though, so you could add it back in if you want. But if you've played around with the layout too much and you don't like what you've done, on the phone you can hit reset, reset, in order to bring it back to the factory default layout instead. If you were to hop back home again, hit that little settings icon. Again, you can disconnect easily that way if you didn't want to be connected to Apple CarPlay anymore. So I know that's a bit, but that's how you set up Apple devices inside of the Kia K4. Setting up Android devices is the exact same process. So if you weren't on the screen, you're back home there, you can hit your phone there. Phone projection would be for Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, but as of right now, I'm connected to the iPhone. So what you're going to want to do here, swipe across. If you've got multiple phones connected, go to your setup, device connections, and then you've got this screen again. You're just going to hit add new.
On your mobile device in order to search.
On your phone.
Device, select the name that matches vehicle name on the screen.
Waiting for K4 to show up, which it did. PIN numbers match up, so okay there. Look at that, K4 is connecting, and it's also wireless Android Auto. Again, backwards compatibility is there, so if you wanted to use a USB cable, you absolutely could. But yes, we want to use Android Auto, and it'll take a second there. And look at that, 3, 2, 1, we are fully connected to Android Auto as well. And I mean, it looks nice. Now on the phone right now, it's also asking, do you want to allow access to contacts and messages? Again, this is not my car, so I'm going to say no to that one. If it was yours, you could say yes, but Android Auto layout is simple and straightforward. You've got your, so it said unsuccessful because I said no to that message, but you've got your current battery, connection level, and time. Google Maps is available here with full pinch to zoom capabilities. It's not like that on the Apple CarPlay side. You can search for addresses. You could also look at satellite view versus terrain view. You've got the option of adjusting things on your route, so avoiding highways, toll roads, and ferries. It's the same thing on Google Maps. Mute out notifications, change up your heading, and things like that. It's available. You can hit this icon in order to get to your little split screen there instead. And then if you wanted to go full screen maps, just that way again, and you're connected. You've also got your voice assistant, so you can hit that, or hit the voice assistant icon on the steering wheel in order to be able to turn that on instead. And then if you're here, you hit again to get to a little icon view. I've got Waze installed on this Android device, but if you've got Waze installed on your Android and it's not showing up, check down in the description of this video for a little walkthrough on how to add it in. Now, you've also got the flexibility of adjusting the layout, and it's similar to the iPhone side. So what you want to do on Android is search for Android Auto, go to Android Auto settings, and then you're looking for customize launcher. And then if you wanted to adjust it, so you wanted to have Waze on top, you want your phone up there, you can do it. Anything with a check mark next to it, you could deselect it as well, or you can add it back in by selecting it again. But it's not dynamic the same way it was on the iPhone side, so it doesn't adjust it on the fly. In order to adjust it here, you just have to go back home, go into your settings. From there, you're going to disconnect from Android Auto. You're going to reconnect to Android Auto when it launches back in, go to our icon view, and the changes that we've made have now come into effect. It's that easy doing it. It's pretty simple. I would like to see that dynamic, but you can at least adjust it. Back on our little settings icon here, you can either be connected to Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, not both, but you can do a mix and match. So if you had one phone that you wanted to use for phone calls and one phone that you could do for media, you can do that. So you can do a little mix and match here. You can also hit the hamburger icon to do connection priority. So if you've got multiple phones connected, who's it going to try to connect to first instead? And it's automatically going to connect when you start the vehicle up. So it's straightforward doing it. And then if you go to delete devices, you could either mark individual or mark all, and then hit delete, and yes. And 3, 2, 1. Both phones are now disconnected from the vehicle. And it's that easy setting up Android and iPhone devices inside of this ride. From here, the only other big one, like you've got system prompts and things like that, but Bluetooth system information is where you're going to go to change your vehicle name. So if you don't like it to be the generic K4, you can change it to whatever you want to from there. There's phone projection options for Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, so you can see phones that have been connected previously. You can hit this icon there to generate a new Wi-Fi password or look at your owner's manual. But that's how you set up a phone inside the ride. Phone projection is if you had Android Auto or Apple CarPlay set up. Valet mode would lock the screen out, give you some flexibility there. You could see some vehicle diagnostic info if you were connected to one of the main profiles, but you won't be able to see it when you're in the guest profile there. Same thing with maintenance. There are basic notifications and online manual too. So if this video doesn't help out, or if you're getting some weird messages in the cluster, you can just scan the little QR code on your phone, and that's going to launch in to the fully digital owner's manual there instead. So you can look at all of the other options that are available here too. Hit the little home icon, gets you into setup. And there are so many different settings that are available. But one thing I like about Kia is that you've got the flexibility to search, or you can jump in to all of these options just using this option here. So driver assistance, climate, lights, and things like that. So you'll see a few things organized a few different ways. But let's start off on the driving convenience side of things. So firstly is going to be smart cruise control. So inside of the K4, you've only got the option for adaptive cruise. So there's no regular cruise control option available. You could adjust out the distance, acceleration, reaction speed, and things like that. But you're going to utilize the pad along the left-hand side to do it. So you'd toggle cruise control on this way, and it would set it at your current speed. You could then increase or decrease 1 kilometer, 1 mile per hour at a time by going up and down. If you push and hold, that'll increase you 10 kilometers an hour or 5 miles per hour instead, either way. There's a distance indicator, so it's how close or far are you away from the vehicle that's in front of you. You can hit the brake pedal to pause, you can hit here to pause, and you can also hit there in order to resume. But if you want to walk through on the adaptive cruise control or smart cruise system, check down in the description of this video for how it's done. But you can adjust some other settings this way if you'd like. There's some climate settings. There's nothing exciting here. Honestly, I just recommend keeping all of these ones at their default. Flashes, you can either have 1, 3, 5, or 7 as a default. And then there's some high beam options here too. So with your high beams, it's kind of interesting. So with the stick on the left-hand side, you've got a series of different light modes that you can move into. So you've got auto, off, and then your headlamp mode. If you're in the auto mode, you can flash your high beams out, but you can't permanently lock them out. If you push away, it's going to put you into an auto mode. And what that means is that if the car recognizes your high beams are needed, with that turned on, high beams are going to come on automatically. If somebody's oncoming, it's going to turn them off before turning them back on again. You can flash your high beams like I mentioned, but if you want to permanently lock them out, go up to the top headlamp mode instead. From there, you can push away in order to turn on your high beams, pull towards you in order to turn them off instead. But you always want to be in that auto mode, I think, for the most part. But high beam assist is a pretty good setting. There are some options for your door where you can choose when the vehicle automatically either locks or unlocks instead. 2 press unlock, so when you go to unlock the doors, first button press is going to be just the driver's door. Second is going to be the rest of the doors instead. And then there's also a smart trunk, and you can open up the driver's side window. So let's hop outside and I'll show you how those two work. So what you have to do, make sure that the car's locked. You get about 10 to 15 feet away for a few seconds. And then you're just going to walk up towards the back end. And watch this. You can hit the lock button to stop that process, but you've got a smart trunk feature. So rather than a foot activated swipe, it's proximity censored instead. I honestly love that feature. And then there's one other neat key fob trick that you can do, and that's rolling the windows down. So what you're going to do, push and hold the unlock button, release it in order to stop it part way, push and hold again in order to continue the process. So those are pretty cool features. It would be nice if the remote window opened all of the windows, and then raising them back up again would be kind of cool, but at least you've got this available as an option. Then there are some convenient settings. Rear occupant alert. If you've opened up the second row door, go to turn the vehicle off, it's going to chime at you inside of the cluster to check the back seats. And then you can turn off the wireless charge pad there. You can do an oil change yourself if you'd like to, and it's straightforward. From here, you've got your icon view, back to this view. So as I mentioned, you can get to all of these options a few different ways. So we've already seen the driving convenience settings. Driving safety gives you a few other options. So you've got forward safety. So if the vehicle recognizes a potential collision, it could let you know. There's your blind spot safety system as well. So if somebody enters the blind spot on either side of the vehicle, you can see there in the side view mirror, it's going to turn on in order to let you know. If we go back into driver attention warning, leading vehicle departure, if you've come down to a complete stop and there's a vehicle in front of you that starts driving away, if you don't start driving, it's going to give you a little message in the cluster letting you know that the leading vehicle has started moving, so get yourself moving. Inattentive driver warning, if you start to veer over too many times without signaling, eventually it's going to tell you that you should probably take a break. There are some options for your speed limit too, so you've got your speed limit assist, a warning, or nothing. I personally am a bigger fan of nothing. You can see there that it shows up your road speed inside of the cluster screen, so you can get a warning if you're going too fast. And then there's speed limit assist as well. So if the speed goes from, let's say, 60 down to 50, you could then hit the up-down switch there. So you could drop down to whatever the new currently posted speed is. And it's the same thing. If the speed goes from, let's say, 50 to 60, you could then push up in order to go to that higher speed instead. But I'm not a fan of that. You could do that if you'd like. And then there's the speed limit offset. So are you okay with going over or under the speed limit? There's some parking safety options, rear cross traffic safety. So as you go to back up, if there's somebody coming perpendicular, so from the left or the right side, you'll get a little message letting you know that there's somebody there. I'm a big fan of keeping all of these guidelines enabled as well, but you've got some settings here. Jumping back in, your rear parking guidelines. If you don't want those guidelines, you can get rid of them if you wanted to. And there's also this little guy for some additional sound settings, which we've already seen. So again, you'll see a few of these different settings done a few different ways. There are some sound settings here, which we've seen some of these ones already. Actually, I think all of them. Yeah, we've seen all of those sound settings. You can search for individual settings if you'd like to. Device connections, where you can see all of your previously connected phones, change your vehicle name. User profile, again, being able to have multiple user profiles where it's going to remember things like your presets, phones that you've connected. If you've got factory navigation, it would remember all of your previously saved addresses as well. There is a basic screen layout, and the screen layout's kind of neat. So you've got your cluster theme selection where you can link it to your drive mode. So there's a little drive mode button there, and as you adjust through, it's going to slightly change up the look. You've got your speedometer there, so your digital speed, and then as you go to drive, you'll notice that that gauge goes up, and then your tachometer along this side, which will go up as you go to floor it. It's actually kind of cool the way that Kia's done it. But let's say if you love the feature set of the normal mode, but you enjoy one of the other styles there, you've got the flexibility to be able to link it to the individual drive mode if you'd like to, or permanently lock it out to any of the other styles. There's a screensaver available. So when you go to turn the display off, do you want to have a watch face on there, or do you want to have nothing showing up? There's a split screen that's available. If you had factory navigation, that would give you additional options there as well. There are some basic display options where you can adjust the brightness this way if you'd like to. There are some camera settings, so display contents, display settings, so you can adjust the brightness and things like that of the camera. A blue light filter is kind of neat as well. So later on at night, or if it's darker out, what it's going to do with the blue filter on is it's going to reduce eye strain, and you can have it automatically come on, or you can set it yourself and you can adjust. Yeah, you can see it going there. Whether or not it's warmer or cooler, or you can completely disable it if you want. There are a series of different buttons that are available. So there's the one down the center stack here, and this one, what do you want it to do? Do you want it to do nothing, turn the display off, etc.? So now if we hit that button, it turns the display off. There are two different buttons along the steering wheel. So you've got your custom button there. So this little guy, what do you want that star button to do? So you hit that there. Do you want to turn the display off, go into a quiet mode, etc.? When you hit the mode button, so this one here is going to let you jump between all of your available sources. So if you never use Bluetooth audio, you don't want to listen to Android Auto, Apple CarPlay music, things like that, if you just want to be maybe these four, you can do that. So then as you hit the mode button, it's going to change you between AM, FM, SiriusXM, or Sounds of Nature. So you can adjust out whatever options are there. And then the up, down on the steering wheel, what do you want that to do? And that's going to be this guy here. So do you want it to change between all of your different stations that way instead? You've got options. And back into some different cluster views where you've got the option of adjusting the brightness this way. So you can adjust the brightness there, but down by your left knee, there's also a switch there that you can use in order to adjust the brightness out instead. There are basic camera settings, which we've already seen. Cluster theme selection, which we've already seen that. Content selection, do you want to show your wiper, light display, icy road warning, and then a basic welcome sound. Inside of the highest trim level of the vehicle, so the GT Line Luxe in Canada, and then the GT Line with the convenience pack, there's also the option for the blind spot view monitor, where you could hit the turn stalk to go left or right, and it would show you your side-mounted camera there, right inside of the cluster. But the lower trims don't have that available. Let's see. Cluster we've seen, there's Kia Connect, and then some general settings. So you've got your basic device information. You can look at some system information, where you've got your modem, what's new, date and time. So do you want the vehicle to determine the date and time automatically, or do you want to manually set it? Do you want the 12 versus 24-hour mode, so do you prefer that military time instead? And then you can adjust for daylight savings time, and you can lock in your time zone. So if you live somewhere where you straddle a time zone and it's constantly flipping you back and forward, you've got the flexibility to lock it into any of the other options instead. You can change out your language. Do you want to be in English, French, Spanish, or Korean? And then you can change out your keyboard. You can adjust your measurement units. So with your units, do you want to be in either kilometers or miles? And that's going to change out what's going on in the cluster. You can adjust your temperature as well too. Do you want to be in Celsius or Fahrenheit? And then you've got your fuel economy. So because I'm in kilometers, we've got that available. If you're in miles, it changes it out instead. So do you want to be in US or UK? And then you can change out your tire pressure unit as well. So do you want to be in PSI, kPa, or bar? There are some media options too. So do you want your media off when you go to start the vehicle up? I like coming into some audio, but it's a matter of preference. And then do you want to have your media continue to play for a few minutes when you go to turn the vehicle off? There's some reset options. So because I'm in the guest profile, I can only delete the guest profile information. If you were in any of the other main profiles, you could reset all. So you'd essentially be able to bring the vehicle back, do a full factory reset there instead. And that is going to be the basics of the screen. You can see there are some buttons along the very bottom, so you can jump into this home screen. There's a map button, but because I'm not connected to Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, it does nothing. If you were connected, it would launch you into your phone maps. There's a basic search option there, so you could search through the vehicle for certain things. You can mute out audio or adjust your audio this way instead if you'd like to. There's also an option for going into your media and changing out a few different ways. So you could either go at media this way or AM, FM, SiriusXM down the bottom. There's your custom button, jumping into your basic setup as well. Then you've got all of your climate control settings down the bottom. So you could increase, decrease the fan speed, going to your max windshield or rear window defroster. Adjust if you want this going to your windshield face feet. You can adjust the climate, turn on AC, and things like that. And then, if the screen is ever giving you problems, like Apple CarPlay is not working, Android Auto is not working, or just things are going on, you've got the flexibility to reset. So you saw there, you can do a full factory reset if you wanted to. That's probably the worst thing to do because it's going to remove everything from the screen. So if you've got factory nav, it'll get rid of all of your addresses. It's going to get rid of your presets and everything else. So what you can do is grab a paperclip, and there's a little button right underneath the little power button there. You're just going to take the paperclip and insert. And when you do that, that's just going to turn the screen off instead. So what we're doing is we're entering a soft reboot cycle. And that should get rid of the majority of issues that you're having. Think of it just like resetting your phone. It's the same idea. So it's going to get rid of the majority of issues that you may be having. So like I said, if your phone's not connecting, if it's giving you issues with your radio, things like that, that's going to be the first thing for you to try. Factory reset would be the next thing from there. So I know that that is a lot of information, but that's everything that you need to know about the infotainment system inside of the Kia K4.